and thank you again for joining our Advanced Voyager webinar today on Inflight, the GlassView module within Voyager. Because I want to first plan a flight before we jump into GlassView, I'm going to double-click on the Voyager 4 icon here on my screen, and I see the familiar Voyager splash screen. We check for TFRs. There's 35 current we've just downloaded, and they're now on the hard drive on my little Microsoft Surface Pro 2. I say OK, and now we double check and make sure we've got current fuel prices downloaded, and we do. And of course you can uncheck the little box in the corner of each of these dialog boxes so that they don't continue to pop up if you don't want to see them. I'll go ahead and say OK. Go past the one that tells us our instrument approach plates and our chart data is all current. It's in the valid cycle right now. And here I am at the Voyager Task Manager. Now, I'm going to real quick check the weather, but this is going to be a really fast touch base on smart weather within Voyager. This is the weather module, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. I said go ahead and zoom in and focus on my home airport, which is Payne Field, KPAE, in the Seattle area, where Seattle Avionics keeps our little Piper Archer. And you can see that there's different elements being drawn on the screen. Things are being added every about 5 or 10 seconds. We now see the gray cloud layers here that have been added. Prior to that, we got the green, yellow, and red circles, which are weather depiction dots, telling you whether it's VFR, green dot is VFR, yellow is marginal, and red dot is IMC conditions. Currently being shown at all the airports in the United States. Well, and not only the United States, we've got them all throughout Canada, all throughout Mexico, as you see. So we also have the winds aloft arrows on the screen. These splotches here, the NextRad radar. I'm going to go into one of the more advanced features of smart weather. I'm going to come over here, and let's find a place that's got some nasty weather. It looks like right down here. Now, here's an advanced feature tip. Watch what I do. I'm going to go up and click right here on this little arrow. Right now my cursor is a hand. I'm going to go ahead and click on the arrow, and it's going to allow and enable some different functionality. First thing I'm going to do when I click on that is I'm going to click and drag on my screen and zoom in on a particular area. Now I jumped right down to around Phoenix because I see that there's some interesting weather going on. So here we are, lots going on right here in this particular part of the country. So I can see on my screen the gray cloud layers. All the green, yellow, and orange blotches is NextRad radar. So that's precipitation that's falling all the way to the surface. And then of course you can see the green, yellow, and red dots. And I see a combination of the VFR airports that are reporting VFR, the yellow dots are airports reporting marginal, and the red are IMC. I see my wind aloft arrows. Right here, this is 11 knot winds over this airport, 25 knot winds over Scottsdale. And one of the advanced features that's really fun, if I want to get a feeling, let's say I'm going to fly in the Scottsdale area and I want to get a feeling for what the weather is going to be, I can hit the play button down here in the lower left-hand corner. It's the gray circle with the green triangle. When I hit play, my time slider, this little triangle, moves along at 15-minute increments. And notice how the colors of my weather depiction circles change as the winds aloft, as the TAF forecasts change. Now we're outside of the range for the clouds and NextRad radar, so all we're going to see change now is the color of the circles as the TAFs change and the winds aloft change over time. So I'm in play mode, but I'm going to go ahead and hit the pause button here, and I can grab that little white triangle, drag it to whatever time. Let's say I want to see what the time is going to be at 7 o'clock right now. Currently it's 4 o'clock here, 4:10 in the Seattle area. This is what the weather and winds will be at 7 o'clock tonight. If I drag it out and say, well, it'll be tomorrow morning, if I wanted to fly tomorrow morning, well, guess what? All the airports around the Scottsdale area are all VFR conditions tomorrow morning. And looks like up in the mountains north there, I do have a couple IMC airports that are forecasted in the TAF to be IMC. If I want more information on any of these airports, like this one that I see right here with the 17-knot winds over it, I can go ahead and just touch with my finger, and it pulls up the airport information dialog box. This shows me that the ball I clicked on was yellow. It's currently marginal. No, it wasn't. When I clicked on it, it was red. The reason why it was red is because I had drugged my time slider out to tomorrow morning. Now, right now, the weather is marginal VFR at that airport right now. But tomorrow morning, when I drug the time slider out to 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, it's the ball turned red because, as we can read in the TAF, it's going to be red. So on the altitude slider, we can actually go back to the current time right now. And I'm going to turn off the NextRad radar with our 2-column button bar on the upper left, over here, upper left of the screen. And now that I've turned off the NextRad radar, I can see those clouds a little bit better. I'm going to grab my altitude slider, this vertical white slider on the lower left-hand corner of Voyager. I'm going to drag up and say, well, what if I flew to 12,000 feet today? We see our gray clouds diminish because at 12,000 feet there are fewer clouds than we had when we had it down the altitude slider down lower. Now I want to find out where the tops are so that I can find out if I'm going to fly from Yuma over to Scottsdale. I want to be able to fly VFR on top. So let's grab our altitude slider, go up to 13,000 feet. Nope, we still have clouds. Let's go up to 14, 15. Oh, at 15,000 feet, we don't have any clouds except for teeny little gray cloud tops there. You can see in the center of the screen. If I go down from 15,000 to 14,000, we have lots of clouds. So we now know that our tops are at 14 or between 14 and 15. My Bonanza A36 can get up to 18, so I'm going to be able to fly a couple thousand feet above all the tops flying over this today. So that's the power of the time slider and altitude slider that's built into not only the Smart Weather module we're looking at here, but also built into all the other Voyager modules like Smart Plan and GlassView. I'll go ahead and say File Close. We'll close down the Weather module. I get the Voyager Task Manager in between, and now we're going to go plan a flight. I'm going to go ahead and plan a flight now between, I'm going to say that I want to go here. Oh, let's do something a little different. Why don't we go from Reno, KRNO, to Aspen. That should be fun. Lots of mountains in the way. And I'm going to say I want to go on Victor Airways. So now, without using the Flight Plan Wizard, I very quickly will automatically create this flight plan. Now, as the Voyager Smart Router starts, we see the yellow line on the screen. And my last time I used the full-blown Flight Planning Wizard, I said, keep me out of TFRs, keep me out of hot MOAs, keep me out of all my special use airspace. I don't want to go through Class B or C. And so we can see that the auto router automatically bobbed and weaved and took us between all of those different types of airspace on this flight. So I'm going to take a peek down below here, and I see this is going to be 4 hours and 39 minutes with my current route. And I've got all my waypoints. Here's all my wind optimized altitudes. And I picked, just give me my one best altitude today, but in the Flight Planning Wizard, I could also change and say, give me the best altitude, cardinally corrected altitude, for every leg, so that I'll have to change my altitude on each leg, but I'm staying at the altitude that is the best for tailwinds for every leg. Today, I don't want to deal with that. I just said, go ahead and give me the one best altitude, so we've got 17.5, which is below my service ceiling of 18,000 feet, keeps me above all the FAR regulation terrain clearances on my way to Aspen. Down here in the profile view, we can see that we're above the MEAs. The black lines are the Victor Airway MEAs, as you can see, and we're way above all of those because we're going to get there with much greater tailwind push if we fly way up high. So unlike most auto routers, which puts you on the MEA if you say Victors, we're on the Victor, but not at the MEA, way up high above them. Okay, so now we plan the flight. The next thing I probably would want to do is I want to go up and click on my FAA button. I want the Voyager to fill out my FAA flight plan form for me automatically. Here it has. I just click the File via the Internet button, the one in the center down here at the bottom. I'm not going to do it because it takes a minute or so to connect over the internet and file this flight plan. So I'm not going to click it, but all you do is click the button, come back, it'll show you a receipt saying it was accepted in the system or not. So I've now filed my flight plan. Next thing I may want to do is come up and say, go to the weather drop-down menu and say, please show me my due out weather briefing. This is a route briefing, as we can see by the top of the briefing. And Voyager had already gone out and gotten that for me when I created the flight plan automatically, so it was sitting here just waiting for me to look at. Now I can scroll through it. I can print any pages out of it that I want to, or define which pages I want to print. Or I can go ahead, and this is now saved onto the hard drive, the solid-state hard drive of my Surface Pro 2. And as I jump in the cockpit and I lose my internet connection, which I'm going to do in just a minute, when I start up GlassView and I'm in the cockpit, no internet connection, then I'll still have all this information to access. Still be available even though I don't have any internet. So let's go ahead and close that down. And the next thing I want to do is say File, Save, because I want to save this flight plan I created. It comes up with a name it thinks is intuitive. Reno to case. Yep, that's pretty intuitive to me. Now I've saved that flight plan. We've done everything that we need to do in the flight planner. I'll go ahead and say File, Close. Now we've had that flight planner open for less than 3 minutes. And we created an ideal wind-optimized, fuel price optimized flight plan. We've avoided all of the airspace and TFRs and hot MOAs and all the kinds of airspace we wanted to. We've planned our fuel stops and stopped at the lowest price place to fill up for fuel within a 30-mile nautical mile radius of when we hit our fuel reserve. All that was done. We filed it. We've gotten a weather briefing, and we're done in less than 3 minutes. Very quick and powerful. Now we want to go ahead and jump into GlassView. But before we do that, I want to make sure that all the information that Voyager went out and collected right now in the background has all been saved onto that hard drive of my Surface Pro before I lose my internet connection when I walk out, get in the plane, and take off. So the best way to do that, and also an advantage of jumping out of Voyager, exiting out of Voyager now, and I'm going to hit the lower left-hand corner button that says Exit Voyager. This will save all my weather, all my preferences, all my TFRs, all my charts, plates, everything saved to my hard drive. And now if I want to, I can use my SkyPad controller to rotate my screen from, right now we're in landscape orientation, which is great for desktop. But usually when you're on a tablet or a convertible laptop that turns into a tablet, most people like to prefer to fly in portrait orientation, where the screen is taller than it is wide. Now, for the GoToWebinar presentation, it's pretty difficult and time-consuming and sometimes glitches on me to do that. So I'm not going to go ahead and rotate. But normally right down at the bottom here, I'd go ahead and click on my SkyPad controller button. Looks like a little yellow daisy. And I say rotate my screen, and it flips me from landscape to portrait. Once I've done that and I'm now in portrait mode, then I come up and I double-click on the Voyager 4 Quick Fly icon. Quick Fly launches Voyager again, and it goes right into the GlassView module, skipping the weather, skipping the flight planner. And it says in this information box, and as I said before, uncheck the little box, the little white square in the corner if you don't want to see these messages, and you'll never see them again. But this is telling me that right now internet access is disabled because I started with Quick Fly. It knows I'm about to take off. I'm not going to have internet when I'm flying along at 18,000 feet on my little Surface tablet. So I want to rely on and make sure I have easy to access all the information that Voyager has downloaded a minute ago when I was on the internet. So I say, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Fires up the 3D charting engine again. We'll see our little globe off to the left. And Voyager is smart enough to say, now hold it. We see that in the last hour, you've created a flight plan, and that's the one at the top of the list. Would you like to activate an existing flight plan? And I'm going to say, you know what, I sure would. Thank you for being smart enough to understand that I had just created a flight plan maybe a couple minutes ago or maybe an hour ago when I was at home before I came here. Now, one of the really neat things about Voyager, unique to all flight planning software applications, is we have a web sync feature where I can even sit down at my desktop at home with a big screen and my mouse and a desktop computer. I could have done this quick flight plan that I did for you just a moment ago on my desktop computer, push the web sync button, which is a little blue, navy blue circle with the white and yellow arrows chasing each other in it, up at the top, upper left-hand corner of Voyager. When I hit web sync, it'll push that Reno to Aspen flight plan I just created out to the cloud, where then when I fire up my Surface Pro, I click on the web sync button there, and on the top of my list on my Surface is that flight plan that I just created, wind optimized, fuel price optimized, filed the flight plan for, and got the weather briefing for. So that's the one I want to open now in GlassView. And there we go, we're all ready to go. Now, if I am on my Surface Pro in my cockpit, I'm going to pull out my GPS, turn on my little portable WASP GPS, and it will connect Bluetooth to my Surface Pro tablet. And now I have a WASP GPS giving me super accurate information right into Voyager in GlassView here. We're currently in GlassView, and you notice GlassView looks a little different than the flight planning mode. We've got quite a bit bigger buttons so that I can hit these with my finger, or I can move my finger along over them and see that this button is show roads. This button is turn on obstacles. I'm going to go down to the layout button right now and just switch our layout over to our tabs layout. This means give me one nice big picture and take all of my little widgets. And Voyager has a half a dozen or more little widgets we can use that do very cool things, and I'll show you the use of a couple of those in a moment. Right now we can see, and let me go get my spotlight here. Right here you can see the tabs, and right now the word chart, I don't know, because I know it's smaller over GoToWebinar, so you might not be able to see, but the word chart is more bold than the word procedure or airport info, telling us that that's the tab we're on right now. So right now we're on the chart tab, and of course we're seeing a chart. I can of course touch my finger on any of those other tabs like procedure, and I didn't create a plate pack, so I don't have any procedures right now, but I could type in an airport if I wanted to and pull up a procedure. I just click on airport info. Voyager's smart enough to know that I'm sitting on the ground in Reno. I've turned on my GPS, I've paired it up to my Surface Pro, we're in Reno, we're about ready to head to Aspen. And so here we are at the nearest airport. Now we show you a small airport diagram right here. But if you want to see other diagrams like the official FAA diagram or an AOPA FBO diagram or the flight guide georeference diagrams from Seattle Avionics, you can view those as well. So let's go ahead and take a peek at one of those. I'm going to go to the FAA. Oh, looks like we did not download this one. Hadn't downloaded it before. I'm going to cheat. So here's our georeferenced airport diagram. And of course I can also click on my flight guide diagram, and it looks like for some reason I hadn't downloaded that either. I apologize. I'm doing a different flight plan than I had originally intended to do because I didn't want to do the same one that I had done yesterday between Seattle and Portland. So trying to mix things up a little bit here. Anyway, so, and of course I can go ahead and move all the way across this little bar, but I'm going to go ahead and go back to our chart window. Now you can, of course, as you know, as an advanced Voyager user, you can click on the chart button at any time and switch to any other type of chart you might want to see. So I'm going to switch over to not the digital sectional, and if you look at the chart button, see how the digital sectional has a check mark by it? That's because we're looking at a vector-based or a digitally drawn sectional. Looks like a sectional, it's the computer's version of a sectional, but not the piece of paper that we all know and love. So now I'm going to click on the scanned one, and of course there I am with my flight plan path and me flying in the cockpit right over a sectional. I can also of course just switch it over to a scanned low and route chart if I want that. As an advanced flight Voyager user, I already know that if I come up to the button bar across the top of GlassView, I can click on obstacles and turn on my digital obstacles even on top of a scanned paper chart. If I want to add roads, I can add roads. I can add cities. I can turn on and off a variety of different things that I might want to. All right, now I want to show you what GlassView is going to really look like when we're moving. So the best way to do that is for me to use the built-in flight simulator that we have built in. I'm going to go to the Tools drop-down menu and say, show me the simulator, please, and hit the play button. Now you can, of course, jump to a particular waypoint if you want to just practice flying your path when you're not actually in the cockpit. You can actually practice flying the path from any point, any waypoint in your flight plan or your nav log. You can start at the beginning of the flight, drag yourself X number of minutes into the flight. You can accelerate your plane so that you don't have to actually, if you're doing a 3-hour flight and you want to practice it, you don't have to sit at your computer for 3 hours. You can zoom up to, Mach 1 and watch your plane move a lot faster, but still pre-flight a 3-hour flight in maybe 20 minutes or something. I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button, say hide the details, move this out of the way, and now our plane is moving over our digital chart. I don't know if you just saw that, but see, obstacle at 84 feet AGL. So there's an obstacle here flashing at my screen, and that flashing tower is telling me that it's within 30 degrees of my nose, and I'm not safely 500 feet above it yet. So it's flashing it at me to let me know that I got to be careful there. I'm getting close to it. Now, as soon as we climb up, and if we look at our GPS here, I'll grab my spotlight. Here we're at 5,000 feet. Once we get just a little bit higher, you see how a lot of these red flashing towers are now blue. They're no longer red, they're no longer flashing. That's because we're safely 500 feet or more above them. So now I can see out ahead of me that, look, I have no more towers I need to worry about as long as I keep climbing. Now I'm, of course, at 67, 65 knot ground speed. I'm up to 5,500 feet. My next waypoint is the Watt intersection, and it's at a bearing of 44 degrees. I see up here 44 degrees. That's magnetic, of course, so that's my heading right now. I can zoom in my screen, zoom in or out by either pinching and zooming, as you can on most mobile devices if you're on a touchscreen tablet like my Surface Pro, or I can come up over here to the range box, click on that with my finger, and say, I want to zoom out to 15 nautical mile range. Well, now we're zoomed out a lot further. Let's go all the way out to 75 nautical mile range. Now I can also click on the weather button down at the bottom of my chart and say, overlay all weather on this chart. Now you see I've got clouds off to my right on the east half or the right half of the screen, right quarter of the screen. I have some gray cloud layers and some green NEXRAD radar splotches. I also have my green weather depiction circles and my wind aloft arrows. I don't have an internet connection right now because I'm in the plane flying, but all this information is resorting to the information that we downloaded before we took off. That's why we call it Smart Weather, is the weather module actually pre-records before we lose our internet connection. It pre-records our METARs, TAF, winds aloft, satellite clouds, NEXRAD radar, a whole bunch of other things on an hour-by-hour basis for up to the next 36 hours. So if my little Bonanza could stay up for 10, 12, 15 hours, I'd be flying along, and the color of the weather depiction circles and my wind aloft arrow velocities in knots would all change every hour, even though I don't have an internet connection, because it's switching through the pre-recorded weather that we recorded and saved onto the hard drive of my Surface before I left. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if you do have an XM receiver, you can go ahead and plug in XM weather, of course, and all this stuff will be live in the cockpit. We don't yet have an ADS-B box working for the weather in Voyager or the GlassView module, but that, of course, is in the works as well. So let's see, what else? Let's go ahead and switch over to. I'm going to go ahead and pull that simulator up again. How are we doing on time? I want to make sure that I leave plenty, so about 4:30. So we're still doing great on time. Let's go ahead and I'll pull up the simulator again. And I'm going to say show details, because what I want to do is grab the time accelerator and I want to go ahead and speed ourselves way up. So I'm going to speed up to like 10 times the speed that my Bonanza would actually be flying. And I'm going to zoom myself down in. And now you can see, here's the outside edge of the Reno airspace. So even though it says we're flying, we're up to 11,000 feet up on the GPS indicator here, upper left-hand corner, 12,000 feet at 63 knots. We're actually seeing the plane flying over the surface at something like 10x that, so 600 miles an hour. So we're going to get a lot further, a lot faster. Now the other thing I can do with that simulator, of course, is I can say pause and say, let's take that flight. I want to go all the way out towards Denver and restart the simulator. And now let's zoom out and see where we are. Hey, guess what? Now I'm going to slow my simulator back down again because we're getting fairly close to Aspen. And I want to zoom in a little bit. I see that my next intersection here looks like is Truel. And am I running? Yeah, I'm almost 0, so I'm barely moving. Let's speed it up a little bit here. There we go. Now I can still see the motion. I can also see the gray cloud layers, see the next rad radar. So this right over here is a cell that's off next to me here. Now I'm in the clear in between the clouds. You can see some gray clouds around here. But I'm out in between the hole and the clear, and here's some next rad precipitation. So that's probably, if I looked off to my right now, out of the aircraft, I'd see some virga falling to the surface right over there. We're going to hit Truel, then we're going to turn right. We're going to head down into Aspen, and I'm going to show you my favorite feature in GlassView. I'm going to go to Airport Info, and it's showing me Eagle County. I'm going to go to the nav log, go to case, double click on it and say show me my information about Aspen where I'm landing. Now I see here that I've got marginal VFR conditions. Because I don't have an XM receiver, I know that that is based on the pre-recorded forecasted weather, the TAFs, from before I left 4 hours ago. So obviously I'd want to call and make sure that what the weather conditions really are, call ATIS as you always do and things like that. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and pick my runway going into Aspen. The marginal conditions, now that I've called in to Aspen, are actually VFR, so it's a little bit better weather than they had predicted. So that's great. So I come here and I say VFR conditions, I can fly the regular VFR pattern, and it tells me that based on the winds at Aspen right now, runway 33 is the one that I will get for the active pattern. So I'm going to say, yes, fly me the VFR pattern, please, on runway 33. I say, OK. It says, do you want to go directly to the entry point for the pattern? I'm going to say, yes, I do. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the simulator for a second so I can zoom up to where we're going. And let's see what Voyager did here. What Voyager did is, based on active runway 33 in Aspen, it looked up in the AFD and saw that 33 in Aspen is a right-hand pattern. It went and created a 3-mile entry waypoint to bring me in on the 45 so that I can enter the right downwind for runway 33. It created a downwind waypoint, a base, and a final turn waypoint so that I can actually fly over the purple line right into the VFR pattern, stay in the pattern at the appropriate distance from the runway, right where the traffic pattern should be flying. Really handy if you're going to an airport that you haven't flown in before, or if it's starting to get dark or something and you can't see it very well, you're not sure. There's nothing worse than as you're flying towards the airport going, oh my God, am I on the right side, the left side? Am I north or south? Which runway is the one I want? Where in the heck would the 45 be? Well, this makes it just brain dead simple. You can almost fly it like a video game if you want to. So now I recommend you don't. I recommend you fly the plane and navigate, but and communicate. But this is really handy to be able to see that what you're doing naturally looking out the window corresponds with what you should be doing here with Voyager's flight plan line. So let's go ahead and start that flight plan back up again. We're now flying towards that point. I'm going to go ahead and speed ourselves up. We'll zoom out a little bit here. And now we see that we're flying right towards Case. As you can see, we're flying right towards that 45-degree entry point. So right now I've already checked data, so I'm going to go ahead and call Case, and I'm going to, it's a non-controlled airport, so I'm going to go ahead and call, and I think it's a non-controlled airport. Maybe I better not make that bet. Anyway, I thought it was a no, there is a tower. Anyway, so you don't want to call the tower, you want to tell them where you are, and they'll say, okay, you're cleared for, entry for 3-3, right on traffic for 3-3. That's the current VFR pattern runway. And you'll say, okay, I'm headed to the 45 entry, unless, of course, they tell you to go somewhere else. And I'm getting a little... I'm clicking on my screen and you guys are not seeing what I'm seeing. My plane's moving and it looks like your plane is not. Why would that be the case here? Yep, see, I'm at the 45 and I'm headed in, but I can see on the audience view window that that is not what you guys are seeing. So it looks like we might be having a little bit of a problem with GoToWebinar right now. So I'm on the 45. I'm about to turn on to the base, or I'm sorry, the downwind leg, but you can't see that. That's frustrating. Well, hang on just a sec here. Let me try to... Yeah, trying to... Yeah. Well, sorry, excuse me, folks. I certainly appreciate your patience here. I'm not quite sure what is going on. Everything I'm doing, clicking all over the place, and I can't seem to get GoToWebinar to go back to where we... I can't get it to connect to where I'm showing on my screen. I don't want to close down GoToWebinar or I'll lose everybody. And it's frozen up. Okay, I'm going to minimize Voyager here and see what happens then. All right. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead just to try to make sure we don't have any problems here. I'm going to go ahead and stop our flight in progress, save the flight plan we created. That will obviously close down the flight plan, take us back into Voyager. I'm going to go ahead and just jump directly into GlassView. I click here on GlassView. I click on the flight plan we just had open. And we're right back where we were. I'll go ahead and fire that simulator up again. And I'll go back to the layout we were on, which is the tabs layout. And here we are taking off out of Reno where we were a few minutes ago. Okay. And one of the things I wanted to show you is I wanted to go ahead and click on the 3D button here. And here we are when we tilt down I advanced the flight simulator here ahead again. And here we are flying into Aspen, and we're in the 3D Highway in the Sky synthetic vision view. So right here we can see that the Case Airport is out here 17 miles ahead of us. We're flying through the purple highway in the sky boxes, and I can see the, I think, Class D cylinder around the Aspen Airport. We're still up at 12,600 feet, haven't really started descending yet because we've got to stay high to be above it. And I can see airspace of surrounding airports off in the distance around the mountains. Now I got there by clicking on the 3D button. We can go back and forth between 3D and 2D just by clicking there on 2D, 3D. I also wanted to flip over to the layout window and show us the two screens side-by-side view. Now I actually have got two windows side by side with my plane flying into Aspen on both of them. I can go ahead and click on one of them, the one on the left. Let me stop the simulator again here. Pause the simulator. And then grab my spotlight. And over here on the left, I see that I have a red box around this window. This red box is telling me that this is the active window, so all of my control buttons down here and across the top all affect that particular window. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the chart and say I want to go to my, my actual scan sectional chart in this window, and then I'm going to touch my finger on the right window to zoom over there, and I'm going to say on that chart I want to go to, let's go to our airport approaches and pick an instrument approach, well, which isn't downloaded. The disadvantages of doing a flight plan that I hadn't planned before the demo. So here is our instrument approach plate on the left-hand side, georeferenced of course, with our plane flying right over the top of the approach plate. And then here we are on the right-hand side over the digital sectional. Now I can go ahead and hit that 3D button again and drop down, and it shows us in the highway in the sky boxes. Just a few miles, we're going to start our descent down into the airport. So I can now have a approach plate or an airport diagram on my left, synthetic vision on the right, or in the left window I can go back to my chart tab and have synthetic view on the right and my section on the left. Or two charts side by side if I want to get out of 3D mode. Okay. So we already showed the runway picker for how we pick a particular runway we want to come into. Showed multiple modes here in GlassView. Oh, I did not show the TAWS view. By clicking here on, this isn't really an advanced feature, but I'll show you anyway because I didn't mention it. This is your terrain awareness view. You can turn that on in any window, and I just, because this is my red boxes around my right window, this is my active window, I clicked on TAWS, and now I can see that if from my current position, if I turned left and I headed over towards red table VOR and flew a little bit past, I'd actually fly into and actually hit the mountains there. The red means I'll hit the mountains. The yellow, of course, means that I'm within 1,000 feet of the mountains. So as we're doing our descent into Aspen, these mountains, as you see, there's going to be more and more and more red and yellow as we get closer down to the runway. So let's go back and flip back over again to our procedure on the left. And I might want to scroll this up where I can actually be looking at my step downs and look at what my decision height altitudes are and a missed approach and that kind of thing. Now I see myself getting real close to the runway. And here we can see with the TAWS things getting red and yellow as we descend down in. And I can, of course, look up on my GPS bar and see that we're 11,000 feet. We're now at about 95 knots, gliding nicely down into Aspen. And, of course, when I'm on the ground, as soon as you touch the runway, then all the ground will be red because you're at that same, altitude. Okay, well, let me check one more time on our timing. Want to make sure we have plenty of time to ask questions. Yep, we're running out of time already, about 4:50. So let me go ahead and I'm going to pull up questions here and see if there's anyone who would like to ask any questions specifically to the crowd, first of all. Hang on while I pull that up. Whoops. All right, I need to look at my audience view. You guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Everything seems to be working well. Still moving. Okay, just so we don't have too many problems, I'm going to go ahead and close down the current flight plan. And then let's go to questions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you would like to ask a question to the group, if you think you have a question that would be fairly applicable to all the people on the webinar, then go ahead and raise your hand. Check the little hand icon next to your name, and we'll go ahead and let you ask a question to the group. So you go to the attendees box there. Looks like Jeff is with us, and Jeff has a question. Let me unmute you. Jeff, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, Jeff, how are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And what question do you have for us today, Jeff?
So when I'm doing a cross-country flight, I usually fly IFR because it just keeps me safer.
I do too.
And never, ever, ever does the flight plan I end up flying to the destination reflect what I filed. There's always a reroute. There's usually a star or a SID, and then some sort of approach, which I did not put in the flight plan.
Mm-hmm.
Can you demonstrate how, while we're flying, we would change our flight plan to reflect that?
That's actually a great thing, and probably something I should have done anyway. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I pulled open that flight plan again, so I'll go turn on the simulator so we can kind of play around. Go ahead and start the simulator up. And so this is the, well, we got something wrong going on here. Hang on just a second. Let me go ahead and fire this back up again. All right, so we fire quick fly back up. Starts up a charting engine. It should know that yep, that Reno to Aspen flight plan is our first one. Let's go ahead and fire up the simulator and all right. So we'll go ahead and we'll zoom down in. Because we're just taking off out of Reno, I'll go ahead and speed up our acceleration a little bit here. Because we're just taking off out of Reno here, we're not 1,000 feet above the runway or the airport yet. There's our runway, as you can see, and we're just getting high enough that we're now 1,000 feet over the terrain beneath us, and that's why the yellow is going away. I'm going to go back to change my layout to full screen so we can see a little better where we're going. And I'll zoom out a little bit. We can see that there's still some things around in our vicinity that we'd hit if we didn't keep climbing. We're headed to that WADS intersection out ahead of us. The yellow is diminishing and the red is diminishing as we're gaining altitude and getting high enough that we don't have terrain that we need to worry about. So let's say we're flying along and we want to make a change to our nav log. I'm going to go back to layout and switch, and I normally don't fly this way personally, but I'm going to go ahead and go back to the split screen one, the default Voyager layout, so that we can see ourselves flying on the left and I still have tools on the right-hand side. Now, one thing I guess I can point out, this is a little distraction, but right here you can see that we've got a gray horizontal line right across here, and that horizontal line is indicating our altitude of about 12,000 feet. We can see right up here that we're about 12,000 feet, and it shows us what headwinds we're fighting today. So that's certainly very handy. But we're flying along, we want to go ahead and we want to change something. One way to do it is you can go ahead and just grab your purple line here, and you could rubber band your flight plan line to a different location and drop it if you want to. But usually you're not going to want to be rubber banding and playing that much if you're busy flying. So one of the most common ways that you might want to make a change is if you click on the nav log here, and let me go clear my yellow scribbles. So I can now come here and I can click on, let's say we're going directly to WADS, and they say, you don't need to go to WADS, proceed direct to LLC. I'm going to go ahead and click on WADS. It says, what do you want to do? I want to delete the waypoint. You sure you want to delete it? Yes, I do. And you see how WADS is now gone? Now, unfortunately, the simulator, when I made that change, something in the simulator is that you change your flight plan and it starts the flight plan over again. So I apologize for that, but we'll speed us back up. But now you notice in our nav log and on our screen, we are no longer going to WADS. If you, let's say that we want to go direct to a waypoint. Let's say that they say, okay, you're cleared direct to LCU, which is in about the middle of our flight plan. I just touch my finger on or click on LCU. It says, what do you want to do? I can say direct to LCU. Now you see that it draws a secondary line, draws a red line direct to LCU, and even though it leaves those other waypoints in the old purple wind-optimized flight plan there for your reference, we're now flying direct to LCU and skipping all of those other waypoints. Now you can always still click on the 3D view, and you see how now we can actually see the direct to line going direct to what is it? Yeah, LCU, I guess. There's a nav 8 ahead of it, but anyways, going direct, and those are the red highway in the sky boxes. It looks like we're flying right past a big gigantic MOA. It must go to 18.5, I imagine, or no, higher than that. It's way above us, so maybe goes to 30 or something. And I can see my original flight plan highway in the sky boxes there over on the left.